Let me speak to Burkina Faso's sovereignty. They maintain their sovereignty.
Close to 3 weeks after the president of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traore, demanding for an apology from Marine Corps General Michael Langley, while being hosted in an interview by Russia's Sputnik Afrique on May 10, 2025, on the sidelines of the 2025 Victory Day Commemorations in Moscow, over his controversial April 3, 2025 remarks that Captain Ibrahim Traore has been using the country's gold to protect himself. The U.S. Africa Command Director has refused to apologize and even made much more controversial remarks about the current situation in Burkina Faso and Captain Ibrahim Traore's leadership. Marine Corps General Langley, who was speaking from Kenya while being hosted in an interview on Citizen TV Kenya on the night of April 27, 2025, affirmed his stand that the situation in Burkina Faso does not look good under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traore, and that the future of the country might be at risk. He at first agreed with Captain Ibrahim Traore that Burkina Faso is a sovereign country that has all the rights to do whatever it wants with its resources, and that it is free to partner with whoever it wants on matters to do with military support and security, but went ahead to say that his April 3, 2025 remarks before the U.S. Senate committee that sparked controversy across the world were merely a cautionary tale from a military perspective. He alleged that Burkina Faso is currently the epicenter of global terrorism, and that it was his time as the U.S. African Command Director to illuminate that the country is probably the weakest point right now, and that there needs to be sufficient resources going to the whole fight against terrorism. That he also wanted to illuminate that Burkina Faso is going in the wrong direction now, with ISIS getting stronger, Jinnim getting stronger, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb getting stronger, and that all of them have been getting stronger after Captain Ibrahim Traore taking over in 2022, and without saying much, take a listen to him.
Well, I would just say just a number of layered threats that I see across the Sahel that emanates downward and could even rise up and back into the Maghreb. When conditions are met, it could exacerbate more instability across the population. That's why I always said that when we look for a solution set, and we're going to be able to table this issue again at this Chad conference, what is the enduring solution for terrorism? As we learned a lot of lessons, what came out of the Levant, out of the Middle East, and Syria and Iraq, and it emanated downward. Because it's important that I put this statistic out there. You know, in 2007, the global percentage of terrorism on the African continent was 2%. 2024, it's like 43%. It migrated down. That ideology migrated down, and some fighters did come through the Maghreb. Just a number of things, the Arab Spring, and the Libya downfall, but that narrative came down into the Sahel. So we're finding out that this jihad and this Islamic extremism kind of resonates with some of the populations and the marginalized populations across the Sahel, and it took hold and it turned very toxic. It turned to an atrocity, whereas these armed gangs took on a caliphate, a desire for a caliphate, which really stoked terrorism. So how do these countries meet this? There's a number of ways. None are modeling a simulation. This is not just kinetics. It's not just being able to have offensive operations to clear. It's a whole of government approach by these African countries, building in education systems, building in the true sense of religion in these populations, and providing services so these military-age males are not indoctrinated into terrorist activities.
Yeah. Is that a change of approach, I think, with AFRICOM? Because we've heard of a move towards, perhaps from the whole government approach that you speak to what I've heard termed as burden sharing. Is there a change?
Yes,
or is
yes, it is moving to burden sharing. Yes,
Explain to us
yes.
what that means.
So we did whole of government approach, and then we know that change of administrations went and they said, okay, let's look at what we've been doing and let's select out what has been working and let's get laser focus on being able to be straight with our partners that have been building capacity and shifting and sharing of a burden. So a number of our partners have that capacity with other allies that collectively can still build that model. Number of examples in West Africa that are in the process of rebuilding this. But the model is effective when you take into account of the whole community that's been affected by terrorism.
So it's them taking that up for themselves. What does that
Yes.
look like, perhaps more specifically? Because it's been.
We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, what's the rollout
They
plan
understand.
for that? Yeah.
Yes. I met with a number of ministers of defense and some presidents and chiefs of defense, and I said, hey, there's a change of our approach. We're going to help you where we can. We do have different priorities, but we're still here for you. We still want you to lead it because you understand your consequences better than anyone. We don't prescript anything in AFRICOM. When I go and I call it a campaign of learning. And people thought, yeah, he's doing a campaign of learning in his first year of AFRICOM. No, I've been doing a campaign of learning throughout. When I sit down with MODs, chiefs of defense or presidents, I learn from them. I learn from them. They tell me what their approach is to terrorism. And I figure out, and they tell me how AFRICOM can help.
All right, so it's about countries perhaps taking up their own autonomy. General, let's talk about countries taking on their own autonomy. You are on African soil, not for the first time, but this would be a good moment to ask about one of the countries that has taken its own autonomy, and that's Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
Your remarks recently at the Senate seem to suggest that he's diverting, that's General Traore, is diverting its 4 billion gold reserves to sustain his military rule rather than for public welfare. These remarks sparked widespread condemnation across the continent. What did you mean by that statement?
Let me speak to Burkina Faso's sovereignty. They maintain their sovereignty. They make their decisions how they use their resources. They make their decisions who their resources go to for military support. That's their sovereign right. But my cautionary tale was just from a military perspective. That was a Senate Armed Services Committee asking me a direct question. Burkina Faso, a lot of great things going on to progress them forward, okay? But then when you look at the military part of it, knowing that that's the epicenter of global terrorism, it was my time to illuminate that this is probably their weakest point, and there needs to be sufficient resources going towards for the whole fight of terrorism in that country, period. They make their decisions, though. That's their sovereignty, their sovereign right to make their decisions, what is appropriate, what's not. But I wanted to illuminate that it's going in the wrong direction now. ISIS is getting stronger. JNIM is getting stronger. Al-Qaeda in the lands of the Maghreb is getting stronger in that country.
And do you think it's getting stronger after General Traore took over?
It has. Just look at the numbers of attacks. It really has, since 2022. I've been tracking this since I took command. So, no ill will towards him, but the decisions is their own. They're looking for other ways to be able to, they're still on warfighting footing. It's just going to take more resources.
So you stand by that statement? Because there's been pressure on you to walk those statements back.
That's my statement. That's my assessment. That is getting worse more needs to be done for not just local, but whole of country, because of these violent extremist organizations are seeking revenue, they're seeking resources, they're seeking recruiting from the Burkinabe people, and they're seeking refuge within their country. That threatens their sovereignty.
And that threatens America's interest?
Say again?
Does that then threaten America's interests?
Yes, thank you for asking that. Because especially ISIS, and of course in East Africa, is inextricably linked all the way to ISIS West Africa, ISIS Sahel. And there's going to be probably a move afoot for them to move and seek refuge within the line. So we have shared objectives, and we offer to work together with the Burkina government and border countries. Mali, Niger, coastal West Africa countries, collective, because here's what these organizations do. Here's what these terrorist organizations do. They seek refuge in the seams or the borders of these countries and lets them thrive and grow and lets them recruit, gain resources to carry on their illicit and nefarious activities against the populations of those people.
And what would America, perhaps AFRICOM, be prepared to do? Would you be considering an ouster like we saw with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya? Because there's still many Africans who are yet to recover from that. If this is a bigger threat, as you say, in Burkina Faso, what is AFRICOM prepared to do about it?
We do indications and warnings. There's a number of activities that we do, and we'll just go ahead and mention building institutional capacity. There's not going to be U.S. boots on the ground. Very, very small for exchange of ideas and training, exercises. Over time, that builds institutional capacity and capability in these armies. There, AFRICOM, we're working towards a burden sharing and a burden shift for their independent operations. That's our goal. We have the shared objectives because these same terrorist groups can threaten our homeland. So we're in concert. I was just an African Lion over in Morocco. A number of countries working together to be able to
Is Burkina Faso invited here today for this conference?
Yes, yes. They were invited to African Lion in Morocco. Yeah. Yes, yeah. Like I said, we're moving forward.
Okay.
We're moving forward because we have that shared goal of defeating terrorism.
All right. Speaking of that, because the reaction out of the statements that you made about Burkina Faso were several African leaders feeling you are speaking on sovereignty issues that America shouldn't be. And as a result, there are those who see the role of Africa as less of a partner in the war against shared threats, as you mentioned, and more of a protector of Western or American economic interests that allows access to Africa's vast mineral resources, and as more of a paternalistic relationship than one of respect amongst peers. What would you respond to that? I
respond that there's others on the globe that do that. There's others on the globe that
like
do
who?
that. I'm going to even bring it up. We should even already know, okay? But I'm going to even bring that up.
Okay.
We respect the sovereignty. We respect their decisions. We respect their decisions of who they choose as a security partner. And then we measure the common denominator that's keeping these countries across the Sahel from progressing forward. In 2050, the largest workforce on the globe is going to come out of the continent of Africa. The youth need hope. They need peace and stability so they can hit their potentials. That's a long-range goal of AFRICOM as we look to help these countries set those conditions for stability and security so prosperity can be presented to all the populations and the youth. Pan-Africanism is real and it's strong, and there's an opportunity to come up on the global stage, and this continent can do it. That's what we really envision.
So you're not concerned about China and Russia expanding their military and economic influence across the continent?
We are concerned about it, yes.
What about it concerns you?
Well, their influence. their influence may not be looked upon as being a positive influence.
For who? For America or for Africa?
Well, for Africans, okay? And then, so Americans have that, have that in mind, that for the African people and across all countries, be able to hit their maximum potential and independence and sovereignty and also freedoms by rules-based international order, being able to get on the global stage and take a leadership role and provide for the people in peace and stability. Some of those aims are not the same as the approach of those other countries on the global stage. So
Do you have an answer?
that's my perspective.